Hi, everyone. I'm glad we're having some great conversations already. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super, super glad to have you all here. Just a little bit of update in the schedule. So I'm going to give a couple remarks here. We're going to bring the mayor up. He's going to give some remarks. Then we're going to break to grab food. You'll come back in and hear some presentations while you eat. So just sit tight. We will get you some food. I know everyone's excited for that. So to introduce myself, my name is Jillian Hansen, and I am currently serving as co-chair of the City of St. Paul's Climate Justice Advisory Board, also known as CJAB. You're probably going to hear a lot of acronyms tonight. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our second annual Climate Forum. All right. Yeah, claps for that. Love it. So a little bit about CJAB. It was created in 2021, and it was based on a recommendation from the city's Climate Action and Resilience Plan, also known as the CARP, again, another acronym. And its role is to advise the mayor and the city council on policies and programs related to the implementation of that CARP plan. CJAB's focus, you can read it there, is to make sure that the costs and benefits of new programs are equitably distributed and address the challenges faced by our most vulnerable populations and neighbors. CJAB emphasizes looking at these issues through a climate justice lens, making sure that decisions being made are not just being made to be profitable or to be completed in the fastest way, but to benefit everyone in the community and specifically groups that have been overlooked in the past. CJAB has a shared leadership model, so that includes co-chairs like myself. We also have youth seats and community seats, all of which are appointed by the mayor. And over the past year, CJAB has expanded our membership and formed an advisory committee to help with the process of updating the CARP, the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. Many of these advisory committee members are out in the crowd today, and we just want to send a special thank you to you for spending your time and providing all of your attention and expertise in helping to update this plan. So CJAB currently meets every other month, and all of these meetings are open to the public. Anyone is welcome. You can see all of the upcoming meetings, locations, and agendas at the City of St. Paul website. If you just Google CJAB as well, it will come up. And we'd love to see you come. And if you have any questions about CJAB, the work that we do, feel free to find me or any of the city staff that are here tonight, and they can answer those questions. So now it is my pleasure to introduce someone who doesn't really need an introduction, which is our very own City of St. Paul Mayor, Mayor Carter.
Good evening. My name is Melvin Carter. I have the privilege of serving as mayor of this incredible city. And don't worry, I know what it means when someone says the mayor's going to speak and then we're going to eat. Even I can decode that introduction. Thank you for being here. This is so cool. This is so incredible to me to see so many people who, I know you have competing priorities and lots of things to do, but to know that we have this many people who on a Thursday evening are willing to prioritize your time in guiding the future of our city's climate work bodes well for our community. So do me a favor first and look across the table at someone else who prioritized this moment with their presence and give them a big, look them in the eyes and give them a big round of applause, please. And while you're in a clapping mood, I have to acknowledge our city's Chief Resilience Officer, Russ Stark, and our Climate Action Coordinator, Liz Boyer, who are a part of the small but mighty team who's led us forward and city staff. On any given day, whatever I'm talking about is almost guaranteed to be me bragging on really, really hard work that someone else has done. And so I have to pause and say thank you to both of you for being that engine of really hard work, helping to drive this forward. Our goal when we started this work as a city was for climate resilience to not be like an office or not be like a project that we do. Climate is one of those things. We elevated three things: climate, or resilience, innovation, and equity, as three things that shouldn't be like a project or a task. but three things that ought to be like a filter through which we see the entire work, a filter through which we see all of our work. And you've led that work, particularly you, Russ, have led that work since the beginning of my administration. And I think we're doing a pretty damn good job. What do you think? And I say that not only to brag on my team, and I should acknowledge as well, we have other city employees who are in the room. I see a couple of folks who are on staff in my office. I see Assistant Chief of our fire department, Melvin. Thank you for being here. He was instrumental in securing in St. Paul the first fully electric fire engine in the state, which is, please, go ahead. Which I gotta say is one of the coolest things that I've been able to be a part of, is getting on the radio and saying, dispatch, this is Mayor Carter. We're putting Minnesota's first electric fire rig into service. And, we don't like to rest on our laurels, so I expect St. Paul will be home to Minnesota's second electric fire rig as well. In the not-too-distant future. I want to thank certainly Director Hartman, Director Caliso, and all the other members of our team who are here. But when I say we're doing a really good job in St. Paul, what I mean when I say we isn't just our city team. It certainly isn't just me, certainly isn't just my staff. Our fundamental belief that drives everything we do as an administration is that every decision that people ever make are made to benefit the decision makers. And so it would follow that if we're committed, if we're going to really look ourselves in the eye and say we're committed to making decisions and making investments and advancing policy in City Hall that benefits a broader set of people, well, the only way to keep that promise is to engage a broader set of people in the decision-making processes. And so I want to thank all of you for being here and taking your time. But more specifically, I want to directly thank our Climate Justice Advisory Board co-chair, Jillian Hansen, and all of the members of the board. Would all the members of our Climate Justice Advisory Board just raise your hand so we can clap for you? Raise them high, please. Your service and detailed work is so critical, especially your recent recommendations to the City Council and to me on the MnDOT Rethinking I-94 project have been super helpful, and we appreciate the deep thinking that went into those things. I'm proud of your leadership. I'm proud of the recommendations made, and I want to agree that the freeway should not be expanded, and that we want to see better transit and fewer car trips in the future, and we want to see a Rondo Land Bridge over that freeway. I also have to say out loud, I agree that MnDOT should continue to further consider an ad grade or boulevard option. I think that's something that's important, and we should see it through and do the full analysis of that. I joke with Russ. I've joked with Russ for years. We came into the city council together, and I've joked with him for years that when I was in high school and college, I thought of being an environmentalist. I looked at the environmentalists and thought it was something I just couldn't afford to be. I looked around and thought of environmentalism as something that requires you to subscribe to the more expensive organic foods or the more expensive hybrid vehicles or the hemp clothing and kind of those types of things. And moreover, I saw environmentalists as something that was about ozone layers and whales and manatees and everything except the neighbors that I saw struggling on a day-to-day basis in community. I'm so proud that we in St. Paul have evolved our understanding of what it means to be committed to our climate as being committed to the people who live in our community, the people who are impacted first and most severely by our climate crisis which we're in, that we've committed ourselves to understanding our climate work as work that benefits our community members and the climate. Our community members and the manatees, our community members and the ozone layer, our community members and all of those ripple effects of all the other folks who are made better off when we prioritize our climate. I was having a conversation just recently with a neighbor who said who had noticed that the electric fire truck that I just talked about was more expensive, and he said, "You spent more money on an electric fire truck." And so that's not inaccurate, but more accurately, we spent more money on a better fire truck. And we started walking him through all of the ways in which that rig represents an upgrade for us. It represents an upgrade in service, represents an upgrade in so many things. It's smaller because it doesn't have to carry around a big diesel engine. And so that means it can turn down streets and alleys that our big fire rigs can't. It obviously doesn't have any diesel exhaust. So that means that we can pull it in and out of a fire station without worrying about exposing our firefighters to carcinogens. It's quiet because it doesn't have a big diesel engine. And that means if the fire department, God forbid, has to show up at my house, they can actually hear each other and coordinate as they're fighting a fire. And one of the things that I learned is that in a lot of our fire engines and every other fire rig, the motor does double duty between driving the truck forward and fueling the pump. Assistant Chief, cut me off if I say something inaccurate. He's giving me a thumbs up, so I'm going to keep going. But that in an electric fire rig, so in one of our fire rigs, you pull up, you stop, you change the transmission over from the drivetrain to the water pump, you start pumping water, and you start getting water on the fire. With our electric fire, like the motor, there's no conflict like that. So they can literally pull up and start putting water on a fire before the truck even parks. We can get water on a fire quicker. That's why we spend more money. I say that just to say that when we care for our climate, we care for our people. When we care for our climate, we care for our community members. When we care for our climate, we care for the children who live along this corridor. We're caring for the people. Councilmember Johnson, it's good to see you. We're caring for the people. We have children in our community who grow up and work hard in school and get straight A's and do their best and never know that the water they're drinking, the field that they're playing on, the air that they're breathing is conspiring to work against them. It's just not fair. It's just not acceptable. And I'm proud to be in a community that knows that we don't have to look 1,000 miles away. We don't have to look into the atmosphere or hemisphere or whatever that layer is called. We don't have to look any further than our own blocks to understand deeply why our commitment to our climate is important. Our climate has already changed drastically. If you're here, you know this already. I show up in Washington, D.C. or somewhere else and start to talk about climate, and people look at me like I don't belong there because I'm not from one of the coasts. And I think we could do a better job sometimes naming the ways in which the impacts that we experience on our blocks and in our communities, whether that's 400,000 pounds of rock crashing from a cliff onto Wabasha, whether that's the experience we have with potholes. I end up telling folks all the time, like, imagine, when I was a kid, it snowed in like October and thawed in like June or something. But we have this like freeze thaw. And if you just do an experiment and open up your freezer door and close it and open it and close it and open it and close it and see what happens to your ice tray. That's what's happening to our streets. I said, like, we're already impacted. We're already experiencing the impacts of climate crisis. You know this already, but I think we have work to do to communicate that to our family members, to communicate to our neighbors. The reason they see the level of urgency in us that they do. The reason it feels like we're reacting as though what we're facing is a crisis is because what we're facing is a crisis. It requires today action. It requires today moves. We see the flooding of our river. We see, I learned a new phrase, I think just like a couple of years ago. I never knew when I was growing up in St. Paul that there were air quality alerts in St. Paul. We had 86 of them last year. Our work is as urgent as ever. We're lucky to have two utilities and partnerships with District Energy, St. Paul, and Xcel Energy, who are helping our city push toward lower greenhouse gas emissions. I'm in national conversations with mayors about climate, and they say, well, what about your relationship with your utility? And I say, oh, well, we have Xcel Energy. And they say, oh, never mind. Because we have a great partner. District Energy St. Paul, which serves downtown with heating and cooling, we're working towards decarbonizing operations over time. Xcel Energy has also just reached an agreement to provide carbon neutral electricity by 2035 in Minnesota, and with the nudge from the state has started working hard of figuring out how to transition away from fossil gas. We're excited about that. In 2022, we launched EV Car Share, the country's largest electric car share program serving St. Paul and Minneapolis, and we're currently working on expansion that will serve even more of our east side. About 500 emission-free trips per day are being taken in EVs, with each shared zero-emission vehicles being used more than 3 times per day. That's really exciting. EV sits alongside our EV Spot network, a network of public EV charging that also serves to recharge the car share fleet, and both focus on serving our lowest income and climate change vulnerable neighborhoods. We're excited about the work that we've begun at the Heights, which will be the largest all-electric development in the state's history. Thank you. We're excited about our work to continue to remake our streets and make it safer and easier to use sustainable transportation options like walking, biking, and transit everywhere. We're excited that we've built out 54 new miles of bikeways in our community during my administration. We're excited for the opportunity that we have in the common sense sales tax that you all passed for us last year to be able to just fundamentally rethink our citywide infrastructure for the next generation. We're excited for the opening of the Gold Line later this month on the east side, connecting downtown to Woodbury. We're excited for the B line in June, connecting downtown to uptown via Selby, Marshall, and Lake Street. We're working closely with the Met Council, Ramsey County, and MnDOT to get the West 7th Bus Rapid Transit Project back on track, as well as the Purple Line on White Bear Avenue. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and I would be remiss to not share. We are excited as heck to continue investing in geothermal heating and cooling at 2 buildings at our Como Zoo and Conservatory and at our new community center on our north end. I want to close with this. When I think about the things that I'm most excited about, when I think about the things that I'm most proud of as mayor, our climate work is right up there. Our EV Spot network, our college savings accounts initiative, through which we start every child born in our city with $50 in a college savings account. Everything that I'm most proud of that we've been able to accomplish together over the past 7 years has one thing in common. The biggest threat, the moment that almost killed every single one of those things, isn't some city council hearing. It isn't some op-ed that was written against us. It's the moment in my mind when it felt impossible. It's the moment in my mind where I had the decision between putting that thing on my desk and putting it in a drawer. We're at a turning point in history right now. You may be aware that chances are we won't get much help in this work from the federal government for the next couple of years. You are aware of that? And the combination between the magnitude of the crisis that we face and what oftentimes feels like the prevailing public discourse on the work that we're committed to threatens to redefine our perspective, even those of us in the room, of what's possible and what's not possible. My challenge to you, when you have the opportunity to make that decision for yourself, when you have the opportunity, when you dream up something that you know would be amazing for our city, and you probably already have something in that bottom drawer. I'm afraid to say this in front of Russ because I know Russ has a lot of stuff sitting waiting for us as a community. My challenge to you is make it possible for our community by deciding in your mind that it is. Big changes happen at City Hall. The biggest changes that happen in City Hall don't happen because City Hall decided that they would. Don't happen because the mayor or even a city council member decided that they should. The biggest changes that happen at City Hall is because our community comes together and pushes for them and sticks to them and advocates for them over time, together, in concert. If you're here, you're already part of that army. If you're here, I'm preaching to the choir. And let me tell you, if you're here, that means I greatly and deeply and eternally appreciate your work. Let's go get them together. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Russ Stark. Briefly, we're going to have Councilmember Shaniqua Johnson up for a few remarks, and then we're going to grab food and then restart the program. Councilmember Johnson.
You guys, the worst place on the agenda is speaking after Mayor Carter. So thank you, Russ. Appreciate it. No, I'm kidding. But so thrilled to be here. Hi, my name is Shaniqua Johnson. And for those that I haven't had a chance to meet, I proudly represent Ward 7 on the east side of St. Paul. And I think it's really important just for us to have a clear picture in this time of uncertainty, letting folks know and letting community members know that climate work is actually something that we are in alignment with. And I'm really proud to be a representative of the council here today, because I think it's really important and a need for us to continue to show that we are standing 10 toes down, joining our mayor, joining our city and our city partners, and continuing to invest in climate work. And that's not debatable. And in this space where so much is not necessarily certain, that's one thing I know for certain that my community members will hold me accountable to. I see some of my Ward 7 folks here. Hi, Jean. But also just as you're looking for what is ahead of us and what lies ahead of us, this conversation is very, very important. And I think crucial to what the future of our city continues to look like. And one of the things that I think is really important is just to reiterate that the council continues to support the investments that we have in climate action. It's actually one of our top priorities this year, and I look forward to being able to see all of your faces in this work as we continue to think big and to invest big, but also in a time where it seems like climate work is under attack, both at the federal level, but just in general, there's a lot of sentiments about why we need to lean in more now that I think we get to answer in rooms like this and continue to be a part of it with folks that want to see intentional investments in climate here in the city of St. Paul and a united stance in that. And so just genuinely appreciate being able to be invited to such a beautiful room of people that are dedicated to trying to decide what is the future that my kids are going to grow up in, that our grandkids are going to grow up in. And soon we'll be able to hear of a lot of investments that the council and the mayor and the city has continued to work on. I think one of the things that comes to mind is the $1 million investment in Healthy Homes and Power of Homes program. The city of St. Paul is a space where having the council and mayor and City Department of Planning and Economic Development, as well as Russ, in a space where we're like, yeah, we want to see this happen. We want to see this investment take place. Soon we'll be hearing about the guidelines and what it looks like, because we have an idea to think ahead. And what it looks like doesn't always have to have a right or wrong way, but this is where ideas happen and become a reality with the proper partnerships. What you're doing today is vital, and it sends a clear message to anyone that is in the city of St. Paul that we care about what their community looks like. We care about what our air looks like. Sitting here, that was the first time I'd heard the number of air quality alerts, but we all felt them. There were times where we couldn't go outside for an extended period of times because we felt what it was like. And that's not necessarily, the message we want to send here in St. Paul, but we definitely want to show that as a result of the increase in air quality alerts, we're actually investing in climate work to combat that. Building on decades of the St. Paul's framework that's already in place with the CARP plan, the community genuinely has to see how well are we doing. some of those numbers, maybe when they were first in place, they seemed a little bit farther away, right? But 2030, 2035, 2050, they're actually going to be here quicker than we know it. Some of them literally will be like within a few years. And so I just want you to know, and I thought it was really important for our council to get up and to share with you that we also remain committed and we join the city in partnership. It's one of the things that has a consensus across the board. So regardless of which council member you're talking about, we're all genuinely here saying we prioritize climate. That's why it's one of our top 5 priorities this year. That's why Councilmember Jost has joined as the lead council member that will be working on the future of the Power of Home programs with Russ, on the franchise fee negotiations, on a lot of the things that are coming up down the pipeline right now for climate. And so I just want you to know that Councilmember Jost couldn't be here today, but we genuinely assigned her because she is our engineer on the council. She is our individual who took climate work really by the helm. And as my sister in that work, I genuinely look forward to being a partner to her because I have a lot of East Siders who care about this work. I have a lot of Ward 7 folks. I don't know if Murph Dawkins is here, but I don't see her today, but genuinely one of the most active Ward 7 folks that I've had who's come to like literally every other office hour that I hold to talk to me about why it's important to invest in climate work here in the city of St. Paul. So genuinely don't want to hold you too long between your food. I heard it got here a little late, so I'm genuinely just like, I just wanted you to know that this is actually something that the council also stands ready to partner in, the work and the ideas that you come up with in this room. So thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to meet all of y'all.
All right, people, the food was a little late. We apologize. It is now here. We're going to take a pause and let you get some food. Let's just do it orderly, and we'll try to reconvene here in about 12 minutes. Thank you. Hey, everybody. I hate to interrupt your socializing, which is actually a big part of why we're all here, but a little bit more program. Just a quick couple of notes. First of all, again, Russ Stark, Chief Resilience Officer. With your delicious food from Afro Deli, hope you're enjoying it. All of the cups and plates and silverware are compostable. We've got the compost bins in the back, so please use as appropriate. Well, thank you for being here, and sorry we interrupted the program a little bit, but we're going to get kind of back on track here. I've been doing this, as Mayor mentioned, for 7 years, and one thing he didn't mention is that we sort of have an unusual model for our climate and sustainability work in St. Paul, in that we don't have a sustainability office per se. I lead the city's work from the mayor's office, and then we have people embedded across city departments who are doing the work in the departments that need to be doing the work as sort of a different model, and there's pros and cons, but a lot of those folks are here in the room today. If you work for the city in something climate or sustainability related, raise your hand, please. Let's give them a big round of applause. I'll mention a few of those folks by name as part of my presentation here too. So a lot of familiar faces in the room. Some of you probably came to our climate engagement sessions 5-6 years ago when we first created the Climate Action Resilience Plan, which was adopted in 2019. At a high level, the plan sets goals for us to be net zero in greenhouse gas emissions in St. Paul by 2050 and to hit a 50% reduction in 2030. Councilmember Johnson mentioned that 2030 year is really kind of creeping up on us here. So we'll get into how we're doing along those lines. The plan's got over 145 actions listed in it. Mayor talked a little bit about the ways in which our climate's already changing, so I won't go into detail here. The piece that's probably most notable, though, is that we're seeing a lot of these things already. We, of course, have seen more flooding, the record number of air quality alerts. Y'all will remember that the marathon was canceled in 23 because it was 90 degrees in October. The number of 90-degree plus days that same year was quite high. Hailstorms and damage. Some of you have probably seen these stories about how the upper Midwest in general, the big thing that's driving our insurance costs up is hailstorms and damage related to them. And we had the extremes last year, I believe the wettest July on record, and then the driest September, 3 months apart. And so we're obviously seeing very different weather, and it's adding up to a very different climate. This map dates back to our original plan. We're going to update this as part of this process, but we know that climate change, as Mayor said, will disproportionately affect people who are already vulnerable to hazards and things like price volatility. What this map does is it takes a composite picture of a lot of different factors, things like flood risk, urban heat island, exposure to air pollution, socioeconomic factors, and identifies in red those areas of the city that are most vulnerable to the combination of these factors, to least vulnerable in the darker green. And so you can see that in general, it's some of the neighborhoods and communities along our freeway corridors that tend to be kind of hotter spaces, a lot of asphalt, a lot of air pollution going on, some of our more industrial areas as well. And so it just gives us a view of like where we need to think about where those impacts are being felt most now and will continue into the future. So we think about investing in trees, we think about investing in other things in these parts of town to help folks cope with the way that climate's already changing. A big part of our work, though, is looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions across our community. And to reduce the emissions, we've got to know where they're coming from. And over 60% of all the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced here in St. Paul, and that's an important caveat, here in St. Paul come from the energy we use in buildings like this one. Power, heating, and cooling. About 2/3 of that 60% comes from bigger buildings, commercial buildings, industrial buildings, multifamily buildings, and about 1/3 from residential. Residential here meaning like 1 to 4 unit housing buildings. Another 30% of the total comes from travel or transportation. And then everything else, waste, water, a few other things, makes up just about 8%. So really it has us super focused primarily on 2 sectors. And that's the energy we use in buildings and the energy we use in transportation. Those other things are important. That caveat that I mentioned, it's important to note the things that we're consuming today, if those things were made or grown somewhere else and the emissions happened somewhere else, that community is responsible for tracking those emissions, even though we're consuming some of those things here. You know, one of the things we realized over the years is that we're often doing a lot more than people know, but we're not doing everything. We got a lot more to do. And so we created this tool about 1.5 years ago. That's our Climate Action Dashboard. This is the front page of the dashboard, and among other things, it's tracking our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. Y'all aren't going to be able to see this from the back, but you can see the colors. And so the pink line on top was our community-wide emissions in 2017. In the blue, you can see that by 2021, we had seen some pretty significant reductions. We're trying to finalize the 2022 data, and there's some glitches in the data that we were talking about earlier today. And then by 2030, we're trying to get to the green. So you can see that pace-wise, we're actually not too far off track. And I'll say that the reductions in greenhouse gases that we've seen have primarily come from a couple of things. One, electricity is getting cleaner fast. That's the biggest one by far. We're also seeing more efficiency in our homes and appliances and things like that. And then 2021 was still relatively high pandemic times, right? And so there was still a drop off in people driving around. And so emissions were also down a little bit because of that. On the transportation side, emissions have come back up almost to pre-pandemic, but not quite. They're still a little bit lower. So we'll start to see some of the factors that go into this creep back up over the next couple of years. So the mayor talked about almost all of these projects. I just wanted to show you a few pictures. The Heights, which many of you know about, but the Heights is the former Hillcrest Golf Course, and it's in the far northeast corner of the city, as far north and east as you can go in St. Paul. Literally Maplewood on two sides. And it is going to be the first all-electric, scaled development in the state's history, including, it is worth applauding, including the state's first networked geothermal system of its size. I know that Jamez is here, and Jamez is building one in Minneapolis too. It's a little bit smaller. Hey, Jamez. We also were lucky to receive the first ever loan from the new state green bank, Minsifa, for this project. So we're excited about that. And these photos are from earlier this year. Mayor was out there building Habitat homes in October as part of Habitat's national build. Habitat's putting up 140-ish units over the next couple of years out there. And we also had a separate occasion for the laying of the first pipes for what will be the network geothermal system this past fall. Briefly talk about, when you think about climate and emissions, there's a lot of stuff happening all over our community. The things most in the city's control, of course, are our own buildings. And so it's really important that we make progress there and track that progress. In our own buildings, we've seen about a 36% reduction in the emissions that come from the energy that those buildings use between 2015 and 2023. And you can see pretty steady progress is being made. Again, a lot of that is cleaner electricity in the orange. You can see that's pretty substantial. In the red, you can see where we are actually buying community solar garden subscriptions. So we are buying solar power, although the RECs are held by others. That's a technical term. I can explain later if you want me to. And then in blue, you've got the natural gas use, which is down a little bit, but not much. And so that's going to be a theme tonight, really focusing moving forward on the ways in which we have to reduce our burning of natural gas in the heating of our buildings. Along with this information, Cecilia Govrick, who's here tonight. Cecilia, where are you? Raise your hand. Back in the purple, you can't miss her in the back corner. Table 18 is leading our work on our city buildings decarbonization plan. We kicked that off in the fall, and it's going to be wrapping up here in the summer. And that plan is going to give us a very specific plan of action for moving away from fossil fuel use in 10 of our largest buildings, and then a more general plan of action for the rest of the buildings across our system. We're getting started on that work even before the plan is done. Mayor mentioned out at Como, you can see the image of the drill out there. We're going to end up by around the end of the year, maybe a little bit later than that, with 2 buildings out at Como being heated and cooled with geothermal systems. Those are going to be primates and polar bears. We're already thinking about what's next out there. The Como Zoo and Conservatory campus by itself is responsible for something like 20 to 25% of the city's energy use. And so we decided that was a great place to start. It's a really old natural gas, I believe 1956 boiler that's a steam system. It's so super inefficient, needs to be reinvested in anyway. And so we're taking advantage of that need by transitioning to clean fuels. Mayor mentioned all the excitement about Fire Engine 7 here, so I don't need to say more about that, but AC Melquist is in the back and will tell you specific stories about how great that rig is operating. In the next weeks, we're going to be opening the new North End Community Center up on North Rice Street, near the Rice Street Library. And that new building is going to be served by a geothermal heating and cooling system. There will be solar on the roof. It is not there yet. We recently got a grant to add that piece. And we're super excited about this building and new operations and really thinking about the ways in which, especially with our new buildings, how do we make them kind of net zero from day one? Some of the stuff that we talk about less from a climate perspective, but is super important, is around land use. And so also within the last 5 years in the city, we did two really big things from a land use perspective. We eliminated minimum parking requirements in all development across the city, which, and so, obviously some people understand why that's significant. But this is part of a slideshow that was used as part of the engagement around that project to explain sort of the potential benefits for different community members of not having minimum parking requirements. But in general, it just means we're not requiring people to build more parking than is needed. And too much parking takes up a lot of space, it's a lot of asphalt, it encourages people to drive more, et cetera. The other big thing, of course, is that we eliminated, for all intents and purposes, single-family zoning. There are still zones that have this new H1 and H2 designation. It allows for up to 4 units per previously single-family lot. And there are H2 zones that allow up to 5. And there's a density bonus, you can go up to 6 in some cases, and so a very significant change from past practice. Why is that a climate action? Because it allows for more units, it allows for more people to live in the same space, which creates a more dense environment. It's easier to serve with walkable services. And we know that people who live in the city in general are responsible for fewer emissions than people in other environments, so we want more neighbors. Mayor mentioned 54 plus new miles of bikeways in the last 7 years, including image here of the Capital City Bikeway downtown, which if you haven't been downtown in a while and seen the new pieces of the bikeway, including on Kellogg, including on Minnesota, it's really coming together as a network in a way that's going to be super exciting in a couple of years when we connect it up to Cathedral Hill and across 94 to John Ireland and really make those kind of final connections across the community to downtown. Mayor really covered this one for me, but we're super excited about Evie. And Aaron Kaiser is up here at table number 4. Raise your hand, Aaron. And Aaron leads the EV car share and electric charging program for the city. A bunch of our partners at Our Car are sitting with her. Raise your hands, please, who operate the car share program. And, you know, we've been doing this a long time now, but it's hard to overstate the significance of this partnership that we've built. We are by far the largest electric car share program in the country. Your city, the city of St. Paul, owns a fleet of 170 electric vehicles that Our Car operates as a car share. We're making public investment in making clean transportation possible. Nobody else is doing it, and we're very proud of that. We just completed the first phase of our build out of the EV Spot network. Thanks, Aaron. Super exciting. Most of it's been done for a while, but like finishing touches, last chargers in. And so this network is now serving more and more people. More and more charging is happening across our network. Councilmember Johnson mentioned one of our exciting new initiatives coming out of some new funding that Mayor and Council agreed on for this year's budget, specifically the Power of Home program alongside the Healthy Homes programs. And Kurt Schultz and Dave Schrader are here who are going to be working on those. You two raise your hands. Thanks, guys. those programs are going to launch this summer. We're super excited to start investing in particular in the homes of some of our lowest income residents so that we can get the emissions reduction benefit, we can reduce their energy bills, we can make the homes more comfortable and more healthy at the same time. And we're concerned that as those of us with more resources start to electrify our homes, that if we don't find public resources to invest in the homes of our lower income residents, they're going to be stuck bearing the burden of a gas system that has fewer customers over time. So it's really important that we start that now. We have partnered extensively in the last few years with Ramsey County on green career pathways, including, I just had a chance earlier today to go and watch a training program over at St. Paul College being operated by the Center for Energy and the Environment that is training young adults, including 6 or 7 St. Paul high school students, so young adults and youth, in residential insulation as well as residential energy auditing, and it was really cool to see their training in action. This is the last cohort that graduated last year, and a majority of these folks have found either internships or jobs in related fields. And so we know that there's going to be a lot of new work in this work of moving away from fossil fuels. It's very labor intensive. It has to be done building by building. You can't do it from somewhere else. And so we have to start building out the workforce. Y'all heard about the CJAB already, but it's been a really important and exciting addition to our work since we last created our climate plan 5 years ago. And I mentioned the dashboard. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. It's actually in a format that pulls up really nicely even on your phone. It's at climateaction.stpaul.gov. And you can just sort of walk through a lot of what I just showed you, but a lot of additional information about 48 or 49 actions. So I'm going to transition now. A big part of the rest of the evening is going to be about you all talking with each other about your thoughts, and I know you came here to talk, and not just to listen, about what we should be prioritizing and doing in the next iteration of our climate plan. So we're planning, we are going to refresh the plan, not totally scrap it, and add a 5-year action plan. The current plan sort of says we got to do all these 145 things between now and 2050, but didn't sort of put them in any particular order. And so that's a big part of what we are aiming to do with this update, is to refresh and then create that 5-year plan. 5 years ago, we were not talking about geothermal energy, and now it's literally something I'm talking about every day, and so there's some need to update the work.
Can I ask a question about geothermal energy?
Yes, but not right this moment. We're going to get to questions here at the end. So as we update the work and involve a lot of community members, Jillian and Mayor both mentioned the sort of expanded table of advisors that we're working with in the CARP update committee. We are also working with Wilder Research, who's helping us with community engagement, and a consultant called Local Climate Solutions, who's doing the writing of the plan update. And it's really important as we get into that work that not only our advisory committee, but all of you, and we have a lot of other engagement sessions upcoming, both participate in and make better the work that we're doing. And so the current structure of the committee is we have a chair, about 6 meetings are going to be happening. We've already had about half of those. And they've helped advise us on this process, and they will help advise us on the priorities and the plan itself. We're in this kind of first phase here on the left still. We are moving toward a city council adoption of an updated plan around July. And then, of course, we've got 5 years to work on that 5-year action plan. All right, so an image here of one of our engagement sessions 5 years ago. But we're excited to receive that input, particularly excited to think about how to prioritize, because there's a lot of different things we need to do as a community, as a city. And we're hoping that one of the things that comes out of tonight is also just additional conversations. You all can go back and have additional conversations with your neighbors, your friends on this topic. And we actually have tools for you to do that that have emerged out of our process. You can take a look at engagestpaul.org/climate2025 to see those tools. And the toolkit, which actually provides you the whole kind of system that you need to have a structured conversation about our plan update and how people are thinking about climate issues and what they want us to focus on. All right, so now I'm going to transition over to a person who I didn't call out earlier, but Liz Boyer is our Climate Action Coordinator, and Liz started with us almost a year ago. That's crazy. Almost a year ago already. And she is going to lead you into our next section of the evening's activities. Thank you, and thank you, Liz.
Both feels like a lot longer than a year and a lot shorter than a year, to tell you the truth. Okay, so next what we have is table conversations. We want